Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live on the West Coast, joined by the former Secretary of State and CIA Director of the United States, Secretary Mike Pompeo. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
The first question has to be the story that came out of the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Lab leak, most likely origin of COVID-19 pandemic, Energy Department now says. Your reaction, Mike Pompeo?
Well, I'm glad they got it right after a couple years now. We've known this for a long time. From the very beginning, Senator Cotton and myself made clear this was the most likely case, just that the data reflected that. And, you know, like much of the stuff that went on during the COVID era, it was just people telling stories that they wanted to believe. And the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda actually worked here inside the United States. And the State Department, my team, did a lot of work in 2020 and 21 to make clear that this was, in fact, a lab leak. It's almost certain that it came from there. And that has deep ramifications, Hugh, for how we should treat the Chinese Communist Party.
Do you think General Secretary Xi and the CCP intentionally withheld news from the world of the leak or the virus being released because they thought if we have to deal with it, the rest of the world has to deal with it?
100%. I think there were probably multiple reasons for that, but your predicate of your whole question, did the Chinese Communist Party, did Xi Jinping withhold this information from the American people? Information that they probably knew in the fall of 2019. Absolute certainty that they did that. They covered up, they hid, they disappeared journalists. All of this to keep the world from knowing that they had screwed up in their lab.
Now, the question I'm getting at is, did they do it because of strategic necessity? In other words, if they had alerted the world would not suffer to the extent that China would. We would have had time to prepare. Therefore, they were just going to drag everyone down with them.
Hard to know. We do know this. We can speculate about what he was thinking. We know what he did. We know that he locked down Wuhan for travel inside the country and put tens of thousands of people on airplanes to places like Milan, spreading what he knew to be a relatively lethal, highly contagious virus around the world. So if you want to imply intent from actions, it is a very clear line to get to the answer that you have in your question, Hugh.
Staying with China for a moment, President Biden and his team are very concerned that China is going to arm Russia in an effort to deplete Russia's arsenal, to resupply Russia's depleted arsenal. Do you think they're going to do that? What do you make of the Biden team efforts to deter them?
It's very clear that the Chinese Communist Party has already provided aid and comfort. This silly throwaway proposed peace deal, the fact that they're now buying energy from Russia, all of these things are already providing Russia with the things they need to continue to kill Ukrainian civilians and hold Europe at risk. So I actually think this is happening today, Hugh, certainly on President Biden's watch. I'm glad that they are telling the Chinese back off. I'm glad that they're talking about some intelligence that it appears that they may have about this. I'm happy to if they have it, they should show the world what the Chinese Communist Party is up to the extent they can. We should make clear that there will be real costs for China and for the Communist Party itself if they continue to support Vladimir Putin in his effort to take down the political leadership in Ukraine and, in fact, take off another slice of Europe on President Biden's watch.
Has the course of the war in Ukraine, Mr. Secretary, in your view, changed China's lean into Taiwan or the threat that they pose to Taiwan? Has it made it greater or lesser?
Difficult to know. All will depend on how it ends, Hugh. It will depend on can the United States continue to lead an effort to make clear that it is unacceptable to invade another sovereign nation, that the use of military force to take territory is unacceptable. So I think the jury's still out. I am sure, Hugh, that Xi Jinping has watched how hard this is. He can see how difficult it is. I am confident he was surprised at both how hard it was and, frankly, how good a job that President Biden and his team have done of keeping Europe in the game in the face of economic difficulty. But this is far from over in Ukraine. And the way that this ends, I think, will be the decisive data point in Xi Jinping's mind as he thinks about how to achieve his ultimate goal of what he calls reuniting Taiwan with China.
Mr. Secretary, on Saturday, Jason Willick, who's an opinion columnist for the Washington Post, put out a column how one Republican senator wants to hold his party together on Ukraine. And it's your friend, Senator Cotton. It posits he wants everyone to support lethal aid in as much as Zelensky needs to keep Russia at bay and drive them back. What's your position, Mr. Secretary?
Unsurprisingly, Senator Cotton, I think about this the same way. We know There are certainly important ramifications inside of Ukraine, but the whole world is watching to see how America responds. We should stay at this. We should make sure the equipment gets to where it's going. We should make sure that they get the training that they need. But the mistake to date, Hugh, has been that we have been way too slow, way too concerned about provoking Vladimir Putin. Had we done this well, had we done this back in September and October of the year before the invasion, we might well have an end of this war today. Instead, we've piecemealed it out. It feels kind of like the way we piecemealed equipment into Vietnam to me, just slow and tenuous and scared, and a recipe for a stalemate that will end in success for the party that we don't want to win. We have to make sure that the West stays together to make sure that folks like Vladimir Putin, these authoritarian regimes, don't believe that they can roll the United States of America.
Now, a number of prominent Republicans, from your former boss, President Trump, to the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, have issued statements that threw a little shade on arming Ukraine. I don't know how to read them. They're not so specific. Certainly blank checks are in nobody's best interest, as Governor DeSantis said. How do you frame Mike Pompeo's view of weaponry that the United States should be sending, and how much and when?
Faster, more, and weapons that make a difference to the achievement of the ultimate objective. Look, our goal is the same as everyone's. We want this to end as quickly as possible, but this has to end in a way that Vladimir Putin is not rewarded for his aggression. So we should have provided more weapons more quickly, more training too. We always think about the tools. Make sure we include all the stuff we do, the intelligence sharing, the capacity to actually do precision targeting at range. Those are the things that America does the best. They haven't asked for our kids, Hugh. And the Biden administration's slowness, right? Its fear of provoking Vladimir Putin has caused this war to go on just as long as it has.
Now, we move from weapon system to weapon system as opposed to strategic objective. We talk about HIMARS, we talk about F-16s, I bring up A-10s. Are we doing the discussion the wrong way?
In what sense, Hugh? Yeah, the answer should be what are the weapon systems that will actually deliver a decisive outcome in the conflict and end the damn thing?
And so do you think F-16s are part of that equation? Do you think A-10s are?
My guess is they both probably are part of the equation. Complicated logistics tale. So I will leave to the professionals on the ground who can see what's needed against the attacks that Russia continues to make even to this day. But we should make sure we provide those in a way that delivers the outcome that matters, not just to the Ukrainian people, not just to the Europeans, but to the United States. Every citizen can see how this is impacting us here at home, and we should bring this to a conclusion quickly. And we have, along with our European friends, who should do more too, we have the ability to do that.
Now, you were stationed in Germany when you were a young soldier, and Germany has just...
Long time ago, Hugh.
Yeah, but you know that the leaders of that era, whether you're too young for Adenauer and you're too old for Angela Merkel, but in between, they had some pretty good leaders, both of the left and the right. What do you make of Germany's to and froing, their double-mindedness? They're almost schizophrenia on Ukraine.
Yes, where's Chancellor Kohl when you need him?
Yes.
Yes, and Reagan and Thatcher as well. And Pope John Paul II, the list of figures who led in moment not too terribly different from this one. Right, this is really, in the end, this is about the Chinese Communist Party. This conflict today on the ground is important, but it is Xi Jinping that threatens the United States of America and our way of life. The Germans, when I was a young soldier, should have done more. We pressed them during my 4 years as Secretary of State. We told them, boy, if you continue to rely on Russian energy, that will end badly. And while we probably couldn't have predicted this, we knew there was always a risk, and now they are suffering from that risk greatly here.
Last question on the CBS Face the Nation yesterday. One of the guests announced that Tehran is just a hair's breadth away from becoming a nuclear power with ICBMs. I think Iran is a vassal state of China. I think Russia is a vassal state of China. That's my strategic lens. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're quite correct. I view it that way. I've spoken about it exactly in that way. Vassal state is probably a modest overstatement, but let's not finesse it. There's no doubt that Iran feels emboldened when the Chinese Communist Party buys their energy and underwrites what it is they are doing. The risk that Iran does, in fact, cross that nuclear threshold or gets close enough that they are considered a threshold nation is enormous to the people of America. Don't think for a moment they will be the last Middle Eastern country that presses for nuclear weaponry. If Iran, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, gets that tool, it puts Israel in a very difficult position at a time we have an administration here in America that is not full-throatedly in support of them. And second, our Middle Eastern friends and the Gulf Arab states are watching this closely too. We need to go back to what we did. We confronted Iran. We made the regime's life difficult, and we reduced the risk to the United States from the threat from there and them as a tool for the Chinese Communist Party.
One political question, Mr. Secretary. I know you haven't declared yet in whether or not you're going to seek the presidency, but if you do and you don't win, will you support the nominee of the party, as has been much discussed this weekend?
Yes.
Mike Pompeo, always a pleasure, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for joining me early on a Monday morning in a week filled with... you're always welcome to come back, Mr. Secretary. I reach out to him on a weekend when there are stories like this one that break, and usually able to find him because you got a crackerjack team, and I much appreciate that. He will support the nominee. That's what Ronna McDaniel was answered.